what is the future of automotive retail? The four key megatrends who are going to drive the future of retail are going to be urbanization, connectivity and convergence. They're going to be the bricks and the clicks and social trends. So in terms of urbanization, if you think that 60% of the world population is going to live in an urban area by 2025, this is a massive impact on the cost of retail space. So retail space will become a luxury. So consequently, dealerships will have to change in format, they will have to change in size, and this will have an impact on the entire retail network.
The car industry has basically been developed with blue water between people who make the products and people who sell the products. I think we're going to see a muddying of that. And I think we are going to see increasingly a sense of car manufacturers having a retail presence. But that's a retail presence principally for brand development purposes, as opposed to necessarily to sell. Any business that's really flying online today will do as many as possible of 5 different things. They'll be social, they'll be local, they'll be mobile, they'll use video, and they'll use a form of aggregation.
The social trends are really, really important to the way the generation Y and the millennials are consuming goods, and the way they're influenced by social media is radically going to change the way we sell car and the way we market cars.
We're seeing that people are entering a physical showroom in the journey to car purchase later than ever before. I mean, just over 80% of car purchases now start online. And when we just look at the used car space, that pushes almost 100% of purchases now start online, and the research happens online. And in a great many places, actually, they only visit a physical showroom once, and that's to conclude the transaction, usually after a confirmatory test drive. So going forwards, we're expecting to see the role of dealerships fundamentally change shape and go from being centres of sales that engage a customer fairly early in the purchase journey, perhaps after they've just done the most rudimentary of research at home with a car magazine, and then guide them through the whole process and compete with one another with increasingly competitive sales tactics to capture that sale.
Digital flagship store, so think of the Audi City London. It is a retail format that has 1/3 of the space of the conventional dealership, but it actually can display an unlimited number of vehicles in an unlimited number of configurations and see it appearing live in the virtual world in front of them. We have the pop-up store, so think of gatherings that are not constant. So it's a more ephemeral store, but it's actually the smarter store when you think of following the crowd, the football, and as I say, go fishing where the fishes are.
We can see a huge amount of customer feedback about current cars based on the way they interact with websites, based on the way they comment about those cars on social media, based on the way that they choose to submit test drive requests or not. And all that information could and should feed directly back into things like sales pitches, into product brochures, into the way that car is marketed.
Nowadays, the journey is not finished. It actually expands into service, it expands into the aftermarket, and it's actually done a lot online. So you have your connected car, you have your telematics, you have your prognosis, and this is how the OEM is actually bringing back and engaging the customer. It's not about the one-stop, once-a-year visit somebody has to do. It's engaging, it's bringing them to digital touch points.
When someone's owned a car they bought from a given dealership for X amount of time, the dealership could and should be able to see how often that car's been driven, in what conditions, what type of driving, and as such, they should be able to recommend particular products and services that would most benefit that customer.
Retailing has to be more interactive, less stable. We're going to have a high level of digitalization, so about 20% of the typical dealership really gives space to digital elements. And the way we sell is going to be consultative, it's not going to be directional, and the holy grail of sales will really be the seamless transition from the online to the offline world, from the virtual shopping experience to the physical shopping experience.
So I know it wasn't all that interesting a video, but it does have a lot of details. And believe it or not, this video, I think it's from 2014 or 2015. So what was fascinating to me was the fact that really visits are down to dealerships to 1 to 2 visits today, whereas years ago it was probably 3 to 5. But anyway, Jeff, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Any of you who are joining us, we do have one good afternooner. And welcome to the AutoHub show. Today is our digital retail really worth it show. And there's a couple of nice great books. We like to start with some suggestions for things to read. There is the Retail Design Institute Stores of the Year, New Retail Born in China Going Global, How Chinese Tech Giants Are Changing Global Commerce. Very interesting topic right now. And of course, Remarkable Retail by Steve Dennis. And the AutoHub show, we're happy to have everybody here. We've got some great guests with us, which my great friend Ian will introduce very quickly. And it's this digital retail really worth it.
Special thanks to Bob Garlett for our new photography. Just so you know, he's the one who took the photos. We were just posing.
Yeah, we had a comment when we posted that online of one guy called us repo men.
Quick video. All right, so go ahead, Jeff.
Excuse me. The disclaimer that we have here is just basically it's covering our behinds. Our guest speakers and guests do not necessarily reflect our policy or positions, and our guests have agreed that their opinions will be shared, and we are not responsible for misuse, reuse, recycled, cited, or uncited copies of content by others. Please read it for all the fine details. And the AutoHub show is for the guests, not Ian and myself, and those of you who know us know we will talk and talk and talk. So we generally tend to mute ourselves personally. If you have a question, we're moderating the chat box. Please put it in the chat box, and we'll call on you for that question, and we'll bring it up to our guests. We have a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience in this call, so we want to share the ideas and respect each other's times. And again, all of our participants have agreed to be open and sharing ideas and are okay with others using them. Oops.
There we go.
And relax. Nobody's trying to sell you. Today, on Friday, we have Vendor Speak, where we hope everybody will sign up and try to sell their fine wares, because heck knows there's tons of them on there. We're an open discussion. We focus on improving business, and everybody's input is important, so please speak up. Again, be respectful of everybody's time, and for the people that are speaking, what I love to tell people too is once they get going, take a moment to breathe, because sometimes we find we're sharing too much, and it's like, oh, wow. Ian, take it away.
All right, so we got digital retail. Thanks, Jeff. Digital retail, we got 4 guests. We have Klaris Kovacks from Moto Insight from Toronto, Ontario. Grew up in Toronto, very familiar with the city. Jason Silberberg, CEO of Nabthat from Los Angeles, California. Michelle, is it Denogean? Is that how you pronounce it?
Denogean.
Okay. Also from Los Angeles, California. And then Michael Bilson, National Sales Director from Pulsar.ai, right near where we are in Bellingham, Washington, the big metropolis. So
isn't Bellingham the American suburb of Vancouver?
Pretty much.
Wow. All righty. So we're going to get started. So, Jeff, you're going to start with the first school question.
You betcha. So, all, again, thank you for coming. Digital retail has become a major factor in retailing cars and trucks in recent years, especially during COVID. It's very interesting. Ian said that last video was done in 2014. And, in the retail side of things, we've been telling people for years, 80%, 90% of the initial interaction is digitally. So we think it's obvious your answer to the question of, is digital retail worth it? So why is it worth it? And Klaris, maybe you could start by answering that question, please.
Sure. It's a complex question. There's so many different directions we can take this in, but just to really think a little bit outside the box, we talked about Carvana. Think of Carvana, it's a business that's worth $38 billion. In 2015, I think they sold 6,500 cars online, and this year it's going to be at 230,000 cars online. Then think about Tesla. Tesla's net promoter score is 96, I believe, which is 58 points higher than automotive industry average. And if we think about digital retailing, the automotive industry has been kind of lagging behind probably 15, 20 years compared to any other retail sector. So we know that consumers have been ready for this way of transacting. They've been doing their research online for many years. We've been talking about transparency from dealerships when the information you provide online to help consumers make those well-informed decisions. So from a consumer perspective, they were already there to make those steps in the purchase funnel, going from research to one or more steps in the transaction piece as well. And with that, we're providing that convenience for them. So we know what the consumer benefit is. Like for them, it's definitely worth it. They're definitely ready for it. And we know with the pandemic that accelerated that kind of like need to must have, because you didn't want to go into the dealership and you were not able to. And then we kind of switch it from our dealer partners' perspective, like, is it worth it for you? During the pandemic, and I'm sure Michelle is the same, that we've seen an accelerated need of having these kind of tools available for our dealer partners. Like before, that was kind of like a nice to have, and all of a sudden it was the only way, literally, to be able to still sell cars. And if we look at the benefits with a good digital retailing platform, it provides a insight and understanding of where the consumer is actually at in their journey. So versus any like third-party leads that you may have gotten in the past, which deemed low quality, at least included the survey, dealers were saying 50 to 8% of their leads are low quality because they're not getting interaction from the consumer. They don't know where they are at in their journey steps. With digital retailing, your conversations are personalized and relevant. You know exactly where the consumer is at. They might self-serve, but it's still a small percent that will go all the way through. But you know how you can progress them further down the funnel, right? You can give them guidance through additional information. So right away, the quality of the conversation improves, and your conversions improve with that as well. And with recent stats that we've seen with our customers, we can see conversion results that like multipliers of your regular e-leads. Like in an industry, it's 6 to 10% that you may convert your e-leads. With us, we can see like individual rooftops converting at almost like 40, 45% conversion, and sales reps at 33% conversion. There's one who was at 45%. Like you don't see those kind of conversions with regular e-leads that you might be receiving. So is it worth it? It's you have to have it. And it's definitely worth it if you're investing and understanding of how the consumer is progressing and address them in a different way than you would with any of your e-leads as well. And then obviously with the conversion, then it comes the rest of the results as well, like your efficiency play, and then potentially of how many cars you could be selling in less amount of time as well.
Great point. Thank you, Jason. How about your response, please?
Yeah. So I think first of all, we come from a different perspective than I think what maybe some of the other panelists bring. So we work with dealers on creating their marketing campaigns, handling their website and managing that and building that. And obviously the digital retailing pieces are part of that website experience, right? Consumers have the ability to go into, that quote unquote experience to start the purchase of a vehicle. I think at the end of the day, when you talk about Carvana and you talk about Tesla, you're talking about kind of if you want to take it from a manufacturer or kind of like the end all be all, pushing that digital retailing experience to the consumer, and doing it forcefully, right? I can't personally go and buy a Carvana vehicle anywhere else outside of online. And so you get into this hodgepodge of what is physical and what is digital when it comes to retailing a vehicle. And what we do notice is that, and I think Moto Insight and Roadster can probably vouch for it, is that you need a lot of play from the dealer, right? The dealer has to make this part of the process internally for it to work. And if they don't, it becomes it becomes actually a hindrance for a consumer. I mean, there's more times than none that I have personally gone onto a dealer website, gone into a digital retail tool, and found a $25,000 car, a lease payment of $955. That is a horrible, horrible user experience. So, the dealerships have to buy in. And that is key for any technology that is being utilized. I don't care if it's our website product or if it's Moto Insight or Roadster. If the dealership is not bought in, they have not made it part of the process internally and made sure at the end of the day the user experience is key and fundamental, it will fall flat on the face. But for the dealers that do bring it in and do kind of force it upon their staff to push and pull the consumer through that experience, it can be a game changer. But from our perspective, right, when we look at traffic, we look at the flow of traffic, we look at where it goes, what consumers are doing, how are they converting, where are they abandoning, and those are key points. And so I think if a dealership can again embrace it, make it part of the process, they can have a lot of success with it. But if they don't, it can actually hurt them more than help them.
Great, fabulous point. I never thought of that, because just like a dealership always fails, if their salespeople don't do their job, all these great platforms that certainly all of you have are no good if the dealership doesn't do their job. Michelle, if you could give us your input on this, please.
Yeah, and I'll just add to what Jason was saying too, because it's sort of like marketing 101, and I think Jason was alluding to this. Like, if you put something in place from a promotional standpoint and start touting it, and you can't pay off on that, then that's actually worse than never doing it at all, right? Like, yeah, you don't ever want to put a message out there that you can't actually deliver on. But we have another saying that ties into that too, which it's only 20% the technology, it's 80% what you do with it. And I think what's fascinating is how many people just dove in during COVID because they had to, right? So you talk about whether or not it's worth it. We've always talked about sort of 3 components to, ROI on digital retailing. We've said, look at engagement. Engagement should increase. That's what Klaris was just mentioning. Is it making you more efficient? And then is it actually improving your CSI scores or your NPS scores, basically customer satisfaction? So those are the 3 areas that we always tell people to look at. And I think pre-COVID, people were looking at digital retailing and saying that, okay, we know we need to modernize the experience. Like, that's why we're doing this. Or maybe it was just in that engagement bucket, right? Like, we know that if we do this and customers come to our website and they can retail themselves, basically, that we're going to increase engagement for all the reasons that Klaris just said, right? That you can see more of it, you can interact with them. The efficiency piece is the piece that I don't think, as much as we talked about it and a lot of our dealer partners have experienced, most people didn't lean into that until COVID. And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road in this, because it's great for customers. Yes, they're ready for it. But really, if you as a dealer can't see the value yourselves, whether it's productivity or profitability, then it's going to be really hard to sell that in and get the buy-in. So what we're actually seeing now from an efficiency standpoint is that people can actually increase the number of units that their salespeople can sell because they are doing this in a remote capacity. If you think about it, most of the traditional retail experience is very linear, right? Customer comes in and the salesperson is assigned and they sit with that customer through the whole process, or they have to go to the desk, but they're involved with one customer at a time. And so what digital retailing actually does enable, it enables this idea of remote selling, where the customers can be in different places and the sales people can actually encourage them through the process. The more that customer does online, interacts, you can now actually work with multiple customers at one time. So we've actually been studying this since the beginning of the pandemic to see, because this is a number that hasn't moved in our industry for like 35 plus years, right? We've been set in stone that like a salesperson can sell 10 units per person. like we have staffing models that are based on that, right? We put in how many cars we think we're going to sell, and 10 is like a fixed number, and then it sort of shoots out the number of salespeople we need. But now we're seeing that these salespeople can sell 13, 16, 20, 30, 40 cars per person. It really depends on how much they embrace. And because of that, I think it's really elevating our expectations. So I think at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty around demand, we don't know, right? Are we turning another corner? I just was reading an article this morning that the UK is in second lockdown, right? So it's really hard for us to predict as an industry where things go. I think this is a way that if you can't be fully staffed, if you're worried about that aspect, you can actually continue with whatever demand you have with the right sizing of your employee base. And as things return, all those people can now sell you more cars. So it's a win-win. And there's not that many of those in life, right? This whole idea of the customer wins and your business can really win by making everybody a lot more efficient.
Terrific. It's an interesting point you made, is that all this stuff existed before COVID and everybody just woke up to it. It's sort of like Zoom, if we'd all bought shares in Zoom before this. Michael, you've been sitting there very patiently and smiling when everybody else talks. So is digital retail worth it? Duh. Why is it worth it?
Well, I think if I could answer that in just a quick sentence, I would say you can compare Amazon to JCPenney's. But in all seriousness, in the auto industry, like any retailer that has already made some moves to retail, get online, the internet has become such a large part of our daily life. The challenge has always been, the customer wants to touch it, they want to taste it, they want to feel it, they want to drive it before they purchase it. And that becomes even more true if we're selling a high ticket item or something that's an infrequent purchase, something that you purchase maybe once every 5 years. So that purchase oftentimes is also driven by the emotions of the moment. So the challenge is to get that digital retail lead, if you would, actually physically into the dealership. That's a place where a lot of dealerships fall short. At Pulsar, we provide an AI-powered, basically sales BDC assistant. And what we see is the customer inquiries that come in to the dealership. And the questions that we have seen quite an uptick in has been shipping availability. We see a lot of people trying to buy cars from another dealership that's out of state. Perhaps their local dealer is not a volume dealer, they're more of a gross profit dealer. They don't think that they're getting the lowest price possible. Maybe there's some better tax incentives by buying it from one of these bigger dealers out of state. We have seen a large uptick in people doing that and investigating that online, requesting virtual walk-around. You see a lot of that nowadays as well from dealers. And they will do all these things before they will actually commit to physically coming into the dealership. And as we can see by the data you showed earlier, they used to take 7 visits of people visiting dealerships here and there before they would determine the right car for them. And now they've got that down to 2. And the reason why is they do all of this stuff and this research online. A couple other things that we have noted: 40% of that activity happens when the dealership's not even open. It happens on weekends. It happens after hours. So a lot of times there's not salespeople available. There's nobody available at the store to answer an immediate question. I think something that really opened my eyes to just how much farther dealers still have yet to go was I was helping my daughter purchase a car just 2 weeks ago, and we sent in an inquiry to several different dealerships just asking a simple question: does the vehicle have Bluetooth, and what is the mileage? We got 5 different responses, all within about 30 seconds from the 5 dealerships, but none of them actually answered the question and went into a whole bunch of different other things. And so is it worth it? Yes, it's definitely worth it. I would say you can't survive in today's marketplace without it. We've seen Carvana, Shift, Vroom, and many other used platforms that have really advanced their sales through it. And as a quick plug, I just want to let everybody know that we do provide the Power 4 Shift.
Fantastic.
Well, it's you hit a nail on the head there. You got 5 responses, probably 4 of them were auto responses, and 1 was somebody just went on their phone in between coffee drinks. So terrific, thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience out there? While you're thinking of questions, type it in the chat box. Ian, please move on to our next question.
Yeah, in your opinion, what's the biggest mistake dealers make on their digital retail platform? And let's start with Klaris.
I think we've already touched on that. I do believe that once you invest in a digital retailing tool, you plug it into your website and you just forget about it and you think it's going to do its magic by itself. It doesn't work like that. Like a good digital retailing platform, it's a tool that will work in your advantage if you actually work the tool, right? And we spoke about that broken experience as well. When consumers go through the whole journey online and when they actually get to interacting with the dealership, it kind of like breaks. So investing in one of these tools is step one, and then adjusting process or culture around it and getting the buy-in from your team is number two, and then implementing those changes into your operations and your daily operating rhythm is kind of like number three. And then also with digital retailing tools, like there's so many other opportunities that you have with those tools right now. Like I know there's a huge inventory supply challenge that's going on in the US as well and in Canada. And your good digital retailing tools that provide the omni-channel platform, you can utilize it to find those hidden opportunities as well, right? Like when you got lease renewals coming up, for example, in your service lane, you can get those high-quality trades from your customers who you already know, you know their vehicle, and then potentially upsell them into other vehicles as well. So really, to me, it's don't just buy into it, utilize it. The tool works if you work the tool, basically. You're invested good money into it, get the time invested, and get it rolled out properly across your teams as well to gain those benefits that Michelle's mentioned as well.
Great. I mean, we definitely did have, so they're not magic, which is not surprising. We actually did have a dealer on the show, on a dealer show we had a few weeks ago. I think it was maybe about a month ago. And he said he's seeing an interesting trend of people who happens on a Chrysler store, interesting trend of customers from all over Canada who are buying vehicles from because they can't find them anywhere else. There is none. So that was kind of interesting. I hadn't seen that because I think he's in Alberta. He had people from Quebec and Ontario buying vehicles from him, which was highly unusual.
One of our West Coast dealers actually sold pre-owned cars from Vancouver in Ottawa, because with digital retailing tools, you're removing those roadblocks that exist in traditional way of transacting.
Right. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Klaris was just saying. There's so many great features and functionality on the inventory issue because, you can do a trade remotely, you can reserve a vehicle remotely and really start the process, leave a deposit. There's just a lot that I think can help. You can even, buy cars from customers directly without them needing to purchase a new vehicle. And so you can really compete on that way with this whole idea of sell your car and try to get your inventory directly. But I agree 100% with what Klaris was saying a minute ago about you can't just plug it into your website and expect that it's just going to rain digital sales like that. That's just not, that's just not what happens. I think that the big thing is how you use it in your dealership and how proactive you are with it. Right. I think that's the big thing. This is about remote sales. This isn't about just the customer guiding themselves through the process. So the more proactive you can train your team to be in guiding people to do these steps, the better off everybody is going to be in the end. And so it really is giving your dealership the tools. The customer welcomes it because they want to be put to work. But the dealership needs to actually be the one who's promoting that in a very proactive way. And then connecting it to the in-store experience. I think that is so critical because there are so many stories of people that have started some of this process online and then they get into the showroom and they have a Groundhog's Day experience where everything that they did online is asked for again. And that's just an awful customer experience if that happens, because you set that expectation, just kind of like Jason was talking about, we were talking about that before, right? You set this expectation that I can do all these things and then I come into the showroom and I can't pick up where I left off. So that is really, I would look, if you guys are exploring tools, I would definitely be looking at those that actually can help you connect those two experiences together so that you can pull up that customer and they can use the same capabilities, the same look and feel, the same technology they did on your website when they get into the showroom. Because let's face it, I have dealership partners that even when like lockdown was happened and the doors were literally locked, they had customers still coming and like knocking on the door trying to get inside. So it's not to say that every customer, I think that would be a very overblown statement, is going to do this soup to nuts online. In fact, it's still a pretty small percentage. It's increased, and definitely this pandemic has increased it, but you still have the vast majority of your customers coming into the showroom. So that connection from what they did online to being able to pick up where they left off is critical. And so it involves everybody on the variable ops side to make that happen. And so I think that's the big thing I would say is just thinking that you can just put the technology in place and make it work, and not thinking about how you're going to connect that online experience to the in-store experience.
We had a question from the audience. I'm curious why a dealer would spend so much money on digital marketing or retailing and not adjust the staff, deals on those clients. It brings to mind the book, Who Moved My Cheese. So why do you think dealers do that?
Well, I personally think that it's best intentions always, right? Like, I think people really do. You've got somebody at the store, usually a dealer principal or a general manager, that truly does believe that this is the future, and just struggles to get the buy-in from their team to actually embrace it across the board. And that's where that disconnect happens. And I think it's a historical problem, right? There's teams that do fundamentally believe that their leadership brings in the fancy, object of the month, the nice flavor of ice cream, right? And it's just gonna be gone. So why should I invest my time? Because this month it's this tool, next month it's this tool. So it's really important that you focus in the beginning on that buy-in. Otherwise, that is exactly what happens. They invest a lot. They think they're just gonna plug it in. Their team's gonna buy in, and then it just becomes, a challenge to get that buy-in.
Cool. Michael, any thoughts on the biggest mistake dealers make in digital retail?
Oh, she really hit a lot of those things on the head right there. They gave you a couple of more ideas. That the biggest mistake that dealers make is obviously not optimizing their digital communication part for the customers. They don't buy in sometimes, and they don't use it correctly. And you said it was plug and play, right? So dealers expect to you're going to plug it in, and they're just going to get results. Some third-party tools will integrate with an existing CRM system, for example. So if your tool is one of those, and it brings great benefit to the dealership, but their staff is not using their CRM tool correctly to begin with. Yeah. So a lot of that does have to go back to the dealership staff. Do they have their guys actually logging all of their activity into the CRM? Are they putting all their notes into the CRM? Are they logging every customer? Are they doing the little housekeeping detail stuff that they need to do on their end to make the other tools work correctly? Second thing I can think of that's a huge thing is inventory. We see so many dealerships inventory that is either not available, it takes too long to get on the website, or there's ones that take way too long to get off. And suddenly they have a big amount of leads on some of these units that are coming in, and customers are disappointed that they don't have that option, and so they have a negative customer experience. So when you're doing your digital retailing, it's important to make sure you have those housekeeping issues handled to where your inventory is current, information is accurate, because when people do research, when they find something, they want to know that it's there. Otherwise, why did they find it on your website still? If it's not available, it shouldn't be on the website. It's the way customers look. And I think that's really where they fall apart quite often. Is communication really that matters the most? It should be fast, but more importantly, it should be comprehensive and answer all the questions that the lead is asking. Nobody appreciates a fast reply unless it really provides them with the next steps or the information that they need to go down to the steps of the step.
Fantastic. Jason, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a bit. I think there's a couple of things. I think one thing that we didn't really talk about, and we have a lot of dealers that we work with in Canada and throughout the U.S. market, is that there's not one way to implement digital retailing, right? There isn't just this one put a button on the site, and that is digital retailing. I mean, we've seen dealers. We look at it from two different perspectives: a push and a pull. A push would be putting a button and pushing your traffic through a digital retailing tool. A pull would be utilizing digital retail in your email communication to the customer, saying, hey, you inquired about this car. Here's our digital retail tool that you can utilize to work out your payments, right? And start the process, your trade-in, whatever it might be. And we've had dealers have a really good amount of success by utilizing that pull model. And so there's no right way to do it. And I think fundamentally, though, not coming from automotive and getting into automotive and now being in the industry for 7 years, our metrics need to be thrown out the window, right? I mean, this whole idea 3 years ago that I need to reply within 1 minute of a lead coming in, right? I have a timer on my CRM needs to be gone, right? This whole idea of like phone calls and how many emails did I write and how many phone calls did I make all has to be thrown out the window, because your employees that's how they're being graded, right? And when you remove that and you talk about being graded based off of how many people actually went through and did a trade-in through our digital retail tool, how many people went through and did a finance application, right? Let's remove the idea of we need to have a phone conversation or an email conversation. Let's look at the metric as how many people did you get through the pipe of our digital retail, right? If you have a buy-in from a dealership. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with it, and there's no right way to do it. You, as a dealer, need to figure out what would be the optimal way to implement something like this into your store to make it successful.
Fantastic. Mr. Jeff.
Well, excuse me, thank you. Another great point there, Jason, is rating the employees on responding within 1 minute, and then they find out most of them respond within 30 minutes if they're lucky. So moving along, there's been, pardon me, what's the future of digital retail in your opinion, and why? And are people going to start walking up to a Carvana vending machine and or a digital vending machine, sticking their credit card in, and boom, buying a car? Michael, can I get your opinion on that, please?
So the future of digital retailing, I think obviously the great advantage is obviously that you're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's instant access to your inventory availability, instant access to questions that people might have. You have access to third-party review sites. In the future, I honestly think that drones are going to be delivering packages from Amazon soon. And I honestly believe that you're going to be able to order your electronic self-driving car online, and it will completely self-deliver it to you at some point.
Interesting.
And a digital assistant will do the walk around to show you everything.
Absolutely. It can just be a no-touch, right, comfort from your own home process.
Terrific. Michelle, what's your point? What's your position on this?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how far into the future you want to go. I'm still waiting for the Jetsons to be a reality in life, personally.
I was thinking that too.
You have jetpacks.
But no, I think in the nearer future, I would say, I personally think that people still want to come into the dealership and kick the tires and drive the car. And so I think that is something that when you look at dealerships, right now around North America, what you're seeing is a benefit that the customer can come and do that versus what some of these other, solutions are offering. But I think as we're just have to see these capabilities sort of come together, dealerships are going to have to continue to evolve on the digital side so that it's all about flexibility. How much does that customer want to do online versus, coming into the showroom and figuring that out and having a very connected journey between what's happening online and what's happening in the showroom. If you think about anything today, and I think somebody brought up Amazon and you can look at, Walmart and Nordstrom and all these companies, I personally don't even really think too much about what I'm doing online versus in store. It's almost seamless, right? Like I can order my groceries and then go curbside and pick them up. And I'm not really thinking about, oh, I did this online, I'm doing this in person. And so I think that is our near-term future, which is to really be looking at how are we digitizing this, right? Are we really digitizing the sales process and able to operate in a lot more efficient manner than we ever have before? And there are lots of conversations happening in the industry around the size of the dealership in the future. But I do think that physical presence is going to be there for the foreseeable future. And we're going to digitize everything, regardless if the customer is on your website or in your showroom.
Perfect. It's very funny because one thing that I've been thinking of while everybody's been talking, one thing that's missing in the digital process is the old salesperson thing where they qualify, they find out what it is they're looking for and that sort of thing. Digital, it appears to me, and I could be wrong, is right now relying on the customer saying, I want a blue Model 2 with these wheels and tires, do you have one, and how much? And then, as Michael said, going out of state or out of province and saying who's going to beat them.
I still think that conversation is happening. I do. I think, but it's actually happening though, whether it's in person or, via video conferencing or phone. And the nice thing with these tools is that you can actually send options to customers, right? There's vehicle recommenders. If they know approximately some features, there's really cool features around sorting and drilling down into different vehicle options. But what we see actually, the number one feature, I would say, that I see used above everything else on our platform anyways, is the ability to share lists of vehicles for you to look at and consider. So that consideration set and that needs assessment that you're talking about, Jeff, is still very happening. It's just transitioned. So now, instead of us talking in person all the time about it, it's a conversation that quickly leads to, here's some options. I'm going to send you a list of very specific VINs that meet that need that you have, and you can look at all of them, and you can start deals on whichever one makes sense for you, or multiples if you want to kind of see and play around with the numbers. So I just think it's different, but it's still happening.
Great. So Jason, if you could answer that, but beforehand, I'd like everybody to tell me when you're planning on having a Surrey that you can ask for all the information and let me know so I can invest in it. Jason, there
Yeah. Okay. I guess my take, you have a couple of things that are going to happen in digital retail that is somewhat of a hindrance from a consumer perspective. One of them is being MAP guidelines that are being directed by the OEM, forcing dealerships to have their MSRP before any kind of contact or communication. So if a consumer isn't able to get the pricing front and center for what they will, pay for the vehicle, it is not going to help digital retail. And I think that whole idea of physical and digital morphing together, KPMG comes out with a great kind of book of the Internet of Things every year. One of the things that they kind of look at is, purchasing behavior on different device types and online. One of the interesting data points that they had was that, the more mobile traffic a product gets, the correlation of that product being purchased in store physically, it increases. And so I think when you look at that and you look at, automotive in general has a very high rate of mobile traffic compared to other industry types. You're looking at, post-pandemic, we're seeing 65 to 70% of, automotive traffic being mobile today. That 1 to 2 to 3 websites that people visited when they were low funnel today is actually 7 or 8, right? People have a lot more time on their hands. There's inventory problems. So people are going out and looking at a lot more automotive websites during their purchasing decision. And when we talk about Walmart and Amazon and purchasing a widget or a product online, we have to remember that, as a consumer, we have no risk whatsoever. I can return, whatever product it is that I buy if I don't like it for any reason at any point. And when you're going to buy a $35,000 car and you can't really return it the next day if you want to, we have a little bit of a problem when it comes to digital retail. Digital retail is there to help alleviate the amount of time a consumer needs to spend within a dealership when they pick up a vehicle. And it is fundamentally there. I mean, I can tell you this, we had a dealer that told us, why don't we have a calculator on our website for new cars? And we're like, well, we had it before, but we looked at the data, and unfortunately putting a basic calculator there was actually a negative because consumers didn't know how to utilize it, and they were pricing themselves out of a car because you guys weren't putting the right pricing online or whatever it might be. So a salesperson has to be involved in the process. You're dealing with financing, you're dealing with a trade-in, you're dealing with a bunch of different things that isn't as simple as putting in my credit card info and purchasing it online and waiting for it to arrive that day or the next day. So that is kind of my take on digital retail.
We have a question from the audience, Jeff.
Yeah, this is from Mick saying, Mick, you got great questions. I'm wondering what % of a dealer's marketing budget they're spending on digital advertising and retailing versus 5 years ago. He assumes it'd be around 80%. Hopefully, Mick, you're a he. If that's accurate, how have they adjusted to handle 24/7 advertising? Are they depending on autoresponders? Are they staffing after hours or going with automation to make sure those clients have a good experience? Wow, long question. Jason, maybe you could touch base on that before we switch over to Klaris.
Yeah, I mean, digital advertising has increased year over year. I mean, you can look at the Google numbers came out yesterday. They went through the roof of what people predicted the revenue growth was going to be like. Everything is digital. I mean, intent. It is all happening within Google. We're not big believers in display advertising because display is very noisy. We as consumers have trained our eyeballs to ignore kind of that display advertising. There's not that effect or impact that it had maybe 10 years ago. We have seen dealers primarily decrease their advertising spend over the pandemic. Some of them by 30 or 40%. Others have kept it consistent. When you talk about autoresponders and things like this, I mean, dealers are either building them into their CRM and they're plugging in like a Roadster or a Moto Insight link to that vehicle and pushing consumers into that experience during off hours so they can go through it and do a trade-in or a finance app or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of ways that dealers are utilizing the technology to, again, we got to think of it from this perspective. We're helping the consumer. At the end of the day, we're helping the consumer make a better decision. And we're hoping that at the end of the day, that physical purchase or that purchase will be made at our store, right? And so those are the things that are happening today. The digital advertising piece, again, most dealers have decreased the amount of money that they're spending. And a lot of it has to do with inventory, not really being, confident about where the market is going to be from today to tomorrow. So there's a lot of variables that come into play.
Great, thank you. Klaris,
what?
I was saying, can I add to the autoresponder part of that question?
Sure.
I think that what we are seeing dealers do is it's responding automatically, but a lot more intelligently. So instead of that, we'll get back to you tomorrow morning, or somebody will be in contact soon. There's a lot of automation that can happen to actually pick up that lead if they were on a third-party site, figure out exactly what that person was looking for. If there's a VIN there, they can automatically respond with the exact link into the digital retailing platform so that customer, because I think, Jason, you said it before, I think your number was 20%. Ours is actually 30% is happening after hours. So with all that activity happening after hours, it's really important that you have intelligent automation in place to help get that customer into your digital retailing capability. And then as far as people, I'm actually seeing a lot of dealerships pump the brakes on being open late at night. Like they're actually, this is a trend I've started to hear about, not open as late. They're not being open till 9 o'clock at night because they're realizing that they can make more appointments during the day right now. And after hours, if they get somebody into their digital retailing capability, their salespeople can interact with them remotely at whatever hour of the day. They're incentivized to do that, right? So the texts back and forth or working through the platform. So it was a good question, that last part. I just wanted to touch on that. It's all of those things. It's basically what I was going to say.
Outstanding. Thank you. Klaris, we'll go to you before Ian takes it from there.
Yeah, so future of digital retailing, basically it's here to stay. It's not going away. I don't know if you're part of it. The recent Think Auto, I think it was a couple of weeks ago when they released a stat that 29% of consumers are considering purchasing their vehicles online, but 40% of millennials and Gen Z are certain that they will purchase their next vehicle online. And this is our customer base, right? Like this is where we have to think of. And from a dealership perspective, I feel like that digital retailing is going to integrate into various areas of the business and the way dealerships operate when they start seeing those small results, because we know it's not an overnight change. Like it takes time to adjust the way you operate, the way you sell cars. But once they start seeing those small results, they go into implement into the rest of their business. And I do think overall the consumers are going to win. And I think Michelle said before, and also the dealership, it's a win-win situation. It's just we need to ensure that we're on the right path and we're supporting, like it's our role, our dealer success managers role, my role as well, to ensure that we support dealerships in that process, because it's not easy. It's a big shift. We just stick to thin slice and take those baby steps, and then we can get there together. And I'm just excited about our future, to be honest with you, because it really, in our automotive industry, it's our opportunity to shine through this and then remove that stigma that consumers may have on dealerships and then the way they transact when it comes to selling cars. So, yeah.
Cool.
Fantastic. Thank you.
One final question. We're a little tight on time, so we're going to have to be quick answers. There's been some success in the industry with nearly all digital retailing. What advice can you give the rest of the retail industry regarding their business models versus the people already have it? And starting with Michael.
Oh, my suggestion definitely would be to use more automation. Automate any portion of the business that you can, anything that's repetitive, anything that's menial, that a computer can do. It'll do it faster, it'll do it more efficiently, and it will also record all the data feedback for you as well. At the end of the day, what we've seen with people that have automated, by having a virtual BDC agent, we've seen reduced labor costs, we've seen reduced marketing costs, we've seen them be able to maximize their ROI overall. But most importantly, it comes down to a much more improved customer experience at the end of the day. And I can't think of many decisions that can solve and improve all those different areas, all at once.
Great answer. Michelle.
Yeah, I think, the one thing that I would give as advice is that you can't modernize the customer experience without making it easier to sell. And so when I think about, all the companies that are out there, and I really focus on, trying to figure out the consumer or the digital experience, right? Don't forget about the salesperson's experience and the tools that they need in order to be successful using these tools and engaging with the customers. I think that's probably the biggest advice that I would give. There's a new sales model on the horizon. There's a new staffing model on the horizon. There's so many things happening coming out of this pandemic that if you don't put a focus on really supporting the individuals at the dealership, then it's just not going to be successful.
Thank you. Jason?
I think, from our perspective, we come from building consumer experiences for large telecommunication companies throughout the world, from 04 to pretty much 2015. And everything that we looked at was about the digital experience from a consumer perspective. And I think, again, dealerships have to, you guys wear many, many hats, from finance to service to purchasing vehicles, internal, etc. But you got to look at it from a merchandising perspective. You need to look at your inventory like content. You need to understand what that consumer journey looks like from start to finish, and how all of that is happening within really the mobile device today, and how important that is, and looking at, how are you communicating with your audience when they're coming into the site. We find that over 70% of all leads are being generated off of the first visit. So it tells you how important it is to convert that consumer into an opportunity during their initial time on site. So definitely the experience from a consumer perspective has to be weighed internally.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Clarice, last but not least.
To me, if any advice I could give is to choose a platform that you're able to provide the omni-channel experience with. There are a lot of tools out there that are just kind of like a bolt-on to different tools that they may have had in the past, but you want to ensure that you're able to utilize this fully and provide the experience that consumers are seeking, regardless whether they start online or in the showroom and they finish off online or finish off in the store. So ensure that you have something in place that can move the customer regardless of where they want to go. You're able to meet them where they want to be met, and then also to find those champions in store who's going to support you rolling this out effectively and getting those results in a short time as well.
Fantastic. Well, and since it's the time, we just have a couple final slides. So next week's show is how to save and expand your dealership. We're going to have Max from Perfect Dealer, Lisa from Bank of America, Fareed from Dealer Solutions, and Jennifer Surgeon from Automotive Finance Elite. And we're going to be talking about how dealers can fund growth, expand, and get creative to grow in these challenging times. And then as a final slide, Growth Finders coming up on Vendor Speak this Friday with Marguerite Fleming. So if you're interested in different ways to grow your business, Marguerite's going to be speaking to that. And then future shows. We got John Lacka coming up on Vendor Speak and Gordon Vick from Why Make Appointments. And we got Creating the Perfect Customer Experience. And that's coming up after the next week's show. So thanks very much for taking the time today. Any final thoughts, Jeff?
Thank you, everybody. This has been a great show. I greatly appreciate everything that all of your input. And thanks again, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much
for having us, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.